Welcome back to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness, because what gets measured gets managed. I'm Jake Sanders, joined by our new co-host, Jessica Grazer, the VP of Marketing here at NinjaCat. Today on the show, we're talking about why it's so critical for businesses to document internal processes and knowledge before implementing AI. Our guest today, Vanessa Liu, is an expert in knowledge management as the CEO and co-founder of Supergroup, a tech company designed to capture the operational wisdom inside organizations and turn it into a strategic roadmap. It's a revelation of a chat about offboarding, onboarding, and the ongoing struggles to capture knowledge in the age of AI. You want to hear it, so let's go.
Hi, Vanessa. Welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cool. So I think we're just going to jump in. I've got the first question up for you. So AI is really supposed to unlock efficiency, but most companies we find right now are just struggling to even know where to start. It's just so much is coming at us. But you and your company really take the approach of starting with employee knowledge, and which is really the way work truly gets done. So why is that so critical before you begin to roll out AI?
So, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and even before this whole generative AI revolution that we're finding ourselves in. I started off my career at McKinsey as a consultant. And when you go in as a consultant to a client, it's usually because you're there to diagnose issues. And one of the things that I always saw was that in order to diagnose issues, you actually need to talk to people. You need to understand how things are done. Um, so much of how things are done is not necessarily captured in systems or in documents. It's a result of how people interact with one another. How does an organization actually make decisions? And so when we think about how companies can optimize using AI and building a technology solution for it, you need to have that foundation first and foremost. So that's why understanding explicitly how people do things. So turning that tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge is a really critical step because without that, then you're literally shooting in the dark.
It makes perfect sense that that's a place to start, but how? So, like, when you talk about capturing that, and even if people are on board with that being step one, like, how do you, in practice, capture the operational wisdom, that tacit knowledge? Can you walk us through how you help a team what they know and do?
Yep. And actually, we've worked with over a dozen customers so far in the last year and a half, and primarily PE-backed portfolio companies. One company I think like many folks are aware of as consumers is a company called Supergroup. Supergroup is a sunscreen company, and so they wanted us to come in and help them map their commercialization process. So how do you actually get a product from developing the idea first and foremost all the way to getting it through to shelves. And so there's so many steps in between. And basically the COO said to us, like, could you help us map this? This is not something that is like documented within our organization. Each department knows how things are done, but how things are stitched together, what do you do? If in that case, you go back to the basics. What you do is you actually sit down with the leaders from each of the departments and literally ask them. You ask them things like, can we sit down and talk about what does this process look like? What is your part in the process? Tell me what are the inputs that you need so that you can do the work for your department in this multi like maybe like 15-step process to figure out how do you launch a new product. So if you talk to regulatory, for instance, they're going to be like, well, we need the input from sales forecasting. We need to know what are the ingredients. We need to know which jurisdictions. And that's not necessarily something that is in a system telling you that you need this. It's because the department heads are like, oh, of course you need this. It's almost intuition. So you're literally having to sit down with basically subject matter experts to draw out these answers. So it requires basically interviewing these people, but in a way which is very structured. So you know that you're hitting all of the key components. And I think like what's really exciting about AI right now is that in the past, I mean, there's so many people um, who've done process mapping and process consulting for a long time on the basis of interviews, but it was done manually. You're just like, well, I think I heard most of it. Let me just stitch it together, and it'll take a long time. It usually takes like 3 months to put something like that together. Nowadays,
Right.
what we do is like we have the questions, we send people into a Zoom meeting, a Google Meet, a Microsoft Teams meeting, we send in an AI note taker that is recording, transcribing all of this, and you can then synthesize that. You can actually take multiple subject matter experts who are playing different components, stitch it all together to a process map. So that's exactly what we did for Supergroup. We turned their subject matter expertise into like a 15-step process map. We gave them checklists. We gave them like a RACI template. A RACI template gives you a perspective of who's responsible, accountable, consultant, informed. These things that would have taken literally months for somebody to stitch together with AI, you could do it like literally in a matter of hours.
Do you find
No, go ahead, Jess.
do you find that when you come in for a project like that, I imagine there's some people who might be resistant to sharing some of that information. What are some of the tactics for getting people on board with seeing that end vision, or I'm making an assumption that there might be some resistance. Do you encounter that, and how do you overcome that?
I think so much of it is about sharing why you're collecting this information. Of course, I think that there's in like the supergroup case, they were thrilled. They're like, wait, this could make my life easier. That means like, when I am needing something and I know there might be a delay from another department, they will know why I actually need this right now. They're like, please sign me up.
Mm.
I want to do that because it's going to make us run much more smoothly. We're going to be just like world class. And so I think like a lot of the instances now that we're seeing and talking to companies are like, this is a way for us to step things up and to really just get to that next level. And it's really exciting. Of course, like this type of knowledge transfer is also something that's really critical during times of restructuring or when you know that you're going to make some organizational changes. And it's at those moments because people are already feeling really nervous. Does this mean that my my role is going to be changed or diminished? And I think so much of it is about able for leaders to talk about why you need to do this. I think it's just like so important for companies to come together to say like, look, we recognize that this is incredibly important. We took it for granted that this, but this is something that would really just benefit everyone to have that. And so just being very forthcoming about what you're going to be using the information for is key.
Absolutely.
So my question is like, that sounds so great. How often is it the case that people are like this? How often is it the case that people have any sort of, I'm just thinking about the silos. We're constantly hearing about the
Oh,
silos. Oh, people are in the silos. And you're like, well, how did they get in there? And then how do they stay in there? And then how often do you see a company that has a change management aplomb or skill? And how often do you see somebody who has no plan for that? Like, what's the odds here? Are there the majority of people who have it's kind of a mess, or are there do you find in the clients that you've worked with, they have a pretty
well,
good grip on this, or what is it?
I think it's very natural. So what I find is that they're really, three main drivers of why companies don't necessarily have processes documented all the time. Number one, it
Mm.
is extremely time consuming. And the moment that you do document something, it's pretty much like obsolete in a few days because things
Right.
change, right? And so that's one driver. A second driver is the fact that you might also have of like a growing company. When you're growing, it like basically there's like a sweet spot, which a lot of people talk about. When you're in a company of like about 150 people, you get to know everybody and you know what people do. When it gets beyond that, that's when you start having to have like really like a chain of command very, very clearly articulated. And especially in fast growing companies, like when that happens, then things just disperse because you're like, we're just trying to get things done. And then over time, over a course of a period of time, you're just like, wait a second, we've done things things have been changing so much and know who does what. And you just don't have those numbers anymore where you can tell what's going on. So that's like a second factor. And then the third factor that we see is that in we see this in a lot of legacy companies that we've been working with, where people have been there. The average tenure is maybe 20 years, and we've
Mm.
met employees who've been in companies for like 30 to 40 years, like very, very tenured employees. So much subject matter expertise. If you think about the baby boomer demographic, right? Many of these folks like were in their roles in companies for long periods of time. Like I think that the average number of careers baby boomers had was like 2 to 3 versus nowadays, I think like, the average
14.
like it is right. It's so so there's so much, it's such like high turnover. But in the past then
Totally.
companies didn't necessarily need to document things. They're like, wait, don't worry, you know, like Jake is there.
No, you know what I mean? And then I'm not there. But here's one of the things I'm wondering, like the constant change is the reason I can't really document this stuff. Sorry, things are changing. Oh, we got to change. We got to disrupt. We got to change. And
Yeah.
maybe change is a fourth consideration, that
Yes.
it's just the underlying condition of constant change, ceaseless change, and our
Yes.
inability to meet uncertainty inside the people that are working inside these companies was something more than just hold tight. And I love that, like, if you could do the knowledge capture, you would have this, but I love that you outlined how time consuming it is, how dead on arrival it shows up. You know what I mean? This process has changed.
Yeah.
Just in the hour I just printed this thing.
Yeah.
So people could say, well, things are changing so much, we don't even need to do that. What we need to focus on is automation. What we need to do is get faster and faster. And so,
Right.
like, talk to people who maybe think that you just need to go, you just need to innovate, you need to action. What are the wasted investments, the ineffective projects, just losing knowledge when people leave? Like, there's things that people aren't considering because you said they're implicit, and
Mhm.
what we need to do is make that explicit. So I'm just wondering if you could speak quickly to the people that are like, it's changing, we can't change, we're moving. Why would I even document knowledge? Let's go. Like,
Well,
what's your word to them?
let's talk about the costs of losing expertise. Let's think about, okay, because it's like easier to like quantify when somebody leaves a particular role, and say that that person is just, they've won the lotto. They didn't get hit by the proverbial bus. Let's just say they won the lotto to be more
Good
positive,
for
right?
them.
Yeah, good for them. They're just like, okay, thank you. We're taking off. You're just like, gosh, that person probably was in the midst of a lot of projects. They probably didn't document. And so there's like rework if you're deciding to um, pick up where that person left off, or you might just like drop that innovation because you're just like, I wasn't even aware of it in the first place. Just think about that. Think about the
Right.
cost of rehiring someone. That is something that people are very, very aware of. But like, think about having to train someone and to get them up to speed. That might be 3 months, 6 months. I mean, you also have some roles where it takes like a year for somebody properly. And also think about lost relationships. Like I think about this in the realm of like sales and account executives. And they're just like, I once sat down
Oh,
with an
big time.
executive, yeah, where he was 70 years old. He was working half-time for this one company. And I sat down with him just to interview him. This is when in the beginning when we were trying to understand the extent of the issues involved. And I noticed a stack of papers on his desk that were very neatly stacked in binder clips. I'm like, hey, tell me about what that stack is all about. And he was like, each clip represents like at least like 7 figures of revenue per binder if we were to change our product this way. And I just thought, well, that's amazing, but who else knows that? He goes, oh, no one does. I mean, this is, my system. And I remember thinking like, wow. I mean, how about that person won the lotto tomorrow and be like, see ya, doesn't tell anybody about that.
Right.
Talk about
Oh,
lost things. And like, there's been research that shows that the average, like for a subject matter expert like that walks out the door, what is the cost? It's like about $350,000 per person who goes. So that's what I tell people. Yes, you could change. You could keep on throwing people at it, but that is just super inefficient. And also just think about the rework. Like if you were to be able to just even take the onboarding time, shrink that down by 50%, let's just say 30%, not even like 50%. Like
yeah.
we've worked with companies where we shrunk their onboarding time by 70%. by sharing knowledge,
Um,
but it's like, well, just shrink it down by 30%. Think about just the savings there from like a labor cost perspective. So that's what I would say. And also, just tying it back to automation, I think um, that, recently MIT released this report a few weeks ago talking about
Mm.
how,
the
l-
rounds.
yeah, it's making the
Mm.
rounds. 95% of AI deployments don't make it to production. And it's not because the ROI for AI is not there, it's because the business context for what you need to make this work is not there. It's as if like I'm a company, I'm just gonna throw in 10 people right now and not train them at all or tell them how you do things. That's not a recipe for success. So you have to essentially give basically any agentic system the context that you would also give a person. And so it's very logical when you think about it from that perspective, like treat
Really?
any AI deployment like you're onboarding a person. So what do? You give them context.
Invest that time up front because you're
Right.
going to get the payoff down the road. It's the slow down to speed up kind of mentality that I
Yeah.
think people are forgetting in this race because it is moving so quickly and there's so much pressure, I think, to from either your board or your management to what AI tools are you doing? What have you automated? And like you've got to come with like your laundry list of things that have you piloted or tried.
Right.
And I think that I'm hearing a lot of that pressure from fellow marketers.
Totally.
But I think the approach that you're espousing here is just to do that, like take the initial steps that make so much sense. We also work a lot with agencies where
Okay.
there is kind of higher turnover in the best of times,
Of course.
even.
Yes.
Well,
Sure.
what do you think about in how can you help with organizations that are like quickly seeing higher turnover for various reasons and trying to deploy AI agents effectively and while
Mm.
keeping things, client delivery running smoothly through those transitions. So if somebody does win the lottery, if you will, walk out the door and you haven't done this, it's like, is there a way to kind of, I don't know, just backtrack to try to keep things running?
Definitely. And I think that when I think about companies and having spent time like at a place like McKinsey and then the other large corporate I've spent a bit of time with is SAP, and where whenever you onboard someone, you spend a lot of time onboarding that person. Whenever people are offboarding though, I remember just being shocked how there's really no real process except like, oh, that person had an exit interview, maybe with HR, maybe with a manager, and like that's it.
Maybe.
Maybe. And let's not even forget internal mobility. Like even if you're just people are switching roles, like what happens? And I remember um, I had very, very seasoned colleagues I worked with at SAP who like were there for a decade, were like the key relationships for customers. And I remember when after they
Yeah.
left, I would just be like, oh, I didn't realize that, so and so left. Like, oh, Nicole left. And then they were like, yes. I'm like, well, like, who has the background? They're like, oh, well, Nicole just left and we just don't know. And I'm like, did people spend time with her and to download? And if you think about that, it doesn't take much, right? Like, if you think about why don't we have like a structured process for capturing someone's information? And of course, we all know that it is a drag to ask somebody to sit down and write a memo of all of the outstanding projects that they've done. Right. Like, or that they're in the midst of, and all the relationships. So, like, probably when you're out the door, you're already halfway out the door. You're just like,
Yeah,
you know,
right?
yeah, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. Yeah, they will. I'll take a lot. But like to talk to someone, that's like a low friction type of way. And you can get so much. Like what we find is that literally in like a 2-hour conversation that's properly structured with the right questions,
Mm.
you can
Mm.
get key information. And also that information is not just for the person that they're sitting down with, or like, in the future could just be like an AI avatar that does this exit interview, but the company can retain it. It could be a database then that you tap into. So think about that having that as like a brain you can tap into. So think about the onboarding of new people and having that knowledge.
I'm just confused because I don't think I've ever heard the word offboarding. I was like, oh, is that a thing? Oh, how does that go? Because usually you just peace out. You just like throw a smoke capsule down like Batman, and then you're
Right.
gone.
Right.
But that's not how it works. Is offboarding just everybody? Now I want to know how many people have an offboarding process and they stick to
Large
it.
organizations, there is some
Large ones. Okay.
large, but
Large
I
ones, but like they're offboarding. These are the offboarding checklists. If you literally like,
Oh,
I
right.
spent a lot of time with like HR companies like Workdays or like at SAP Red Success Factors, and baked into the system is like, oh, this person's leaving. Make sure you get their ID card. Make sure you get their IT
Yeah.
laptop.
equipment back,
Sure.
and make sure that you filed their last payroll and like all of those things. And like when it comes to
Blocked
covert
access
benefits,
to the
blocked
network.
all of
Right.
that. And then there's like maybe a little bit like, oh, have an exit interview. There's nothing around sit
Okay.
down and do that. I remember when I was leaving SAP, um, I gave 4 months notice because I was just like, oh, I just want to become an entrepreneur again. And also I just felt like what I created, I was running our early stage accelerators in North America was my baby. So I was just like, I just want that time to make sure they could find the right successor. I want to leave them with the right tools. I want my team to be taken care of. I spent so much time. I literally went through my emails and I had like organized an Excel sheet, an overview of all of the people that I was in contact with and why. Like if you ask somebody, you're part of like 100,000 person organization, it's not obvious who I was working with besides like my immediate
Mm,
team. Like they
mm.
had no idea that these were the 5 business lines I was working with, or these were the people and these were the conversations. I literally had that all down. Like, this is why I talk to these people, and this is why, this is the frequency. And I remember jotting that all down. I had like a playbook. I spent so much time structuring it out. And then that really was the genesis of why don't people do this? Like, oh yeah, because number one, it takes
Mm.
a lot of time.
Well, and
And
there's not many people like you, Vanessa. Can I just say that? As I'm looking at you, I'm like, is this lady a hero? I'm like, I'm just looking for a cape behind you or
I
some
felt
kind of
this.
like hidden chamber you go into to change into the superhero you are. Because I was like, this is a high agency individual who's taking
Extreme
responsibility,
accountability and
extreme
responsibility.
accountability. Like,
Yeah.
whoa. But I don't, does that feel rare? It feels rare. But anyway, you're special.
A
And
lot of people
I'm glad
leader,
you
a high caliber leader. But
put
Yeah.
that into the product.
No.
I
So
agree.
like, but that's what we're trying to do is to make that, let's make that easier so that everybody could be
Yes.
doing that and think about the benefits for the company. Think about your agency customers, right? Like their experience, there are roles, of course, that are high attrition. And if this is a role where on average people say 2 to 3 years, you're like, oh gosh, this is painful. And how can we make it less painful? So that the onboarding time is shortened, so that we have this collective brain and we can actually innovate on the back of it. I think that just the notion, just not even like automation aside, I just think that this is so important for organizations, just that they don't think about this unless there's a burning platform. It's like, oh no, you know, Jeff and Jake are about to walk out the door like next week, and then they freak out. Or like it's, oh, now we have been asked to do this AI automation project, and so let's do it. And then this becomes like a real big priority. But for most companies, they're not thinking about this in this way.
So it's a great segue to kind of that next step. So let's say you've come in, you've done the process mapping, they've taken your advice for the knowledge transfer, you have all of that foundation set. What is then the bridge to automation or AI projects? What does that step look like?
Yeah, so we deliver to our customers like basically outputs that are like detailed process maps which highlight where the pain points are. And then where actually AI is getting so good right now, where the AI will say, hey, these are the areas where you told us this is extremely manual and you should think about automating this. So like for instance, if a process relies on manual comments, um, then let's just make sure that there's like a way of sifting through these manual comments because there's probably like 8 different permutations in terms of how we typically answer. We can just have AI take a stab at that. So we actually have those recommendations, and we have recommendations of what the impact could be. But this is much based on, if you ask like leaders and subject matter experts within companies, like, hey, tell me about this process. How much time do you think we could save? And they usually have a very good idea of like, oh, I know probably like this takes 2 weeks. I know that we could probably get this down to a day. They already have like a good sense of that. That's really what we're
Mm.
trying to surface. And like, one of the things that I think the most about my time when I was a consultant, I remember I would go around interview a lot of the business leaders within companies and ask them like, what are your ideas for new businesses? And then I would present it to the board, present it to the CEOs, and they'd be like, this is like the best thing since sliced bread. And like, this in your company all this time. You just had to talk to them. You just have to surface it. And so that's like what we do. So in these process maps, we're literally saying the process, these are the pain points, this is how you can change, this is what the impact could be. So there's like a blueprint because I think I talked to a lot of my customers who are like, yes, of course we want to experiment with AI. We don't know where to start. So it's always like, well, what is that highest ROI area? What's your hypothesis? If this is the
Mm.
process, well, why don't we go and let's map it for you? And then afterwards, you have a good idea, and they might just be like, oh, so we don't need to like, start from scratch, or like, let's just focus on this, making this part. Like, if we were to cut down this aspect from like 2 days to like 1 day, we can have this much ROI. That is a win. That's how you can get things into production. So that's what we're doing now for our customers.
I have two things. I was thinking like, you're really literally like no stone unturned.
Yeah.
I think that's like, it feels like the things that make value, that create value, are implicit, hidden interactions and not integers. And so what you're actually doing is going and looking under every rock. And people are like, "Ugh, that's going to take forever." But you're looking under to find things to stop. I think this whole process is something that you have to start to find
Right.
out what you can stop doing. Because what you just said was like, oh, there's a process that we're doing that is completely tangential and doesn't add value at all. The only way you would discover it is if you really started looking under the rocks. And I
Right.
think everyone says, no stone unturned here. I know what's going on in my company. And Vanessa's just here to help you say there's things that people aren't sharing because you haven't turned the stones upside down. So I think it's amazing that what you're doing is helping people who think they are a no stone unturned person and showing them the hidden rocks, shells. I mean, it seems like you're wandering around the forest, just like foraging for things and saying, there's a value here. This is a wasted process. Did you know this person hates you? It would be very interesting to just kind of bubble up those things and say, here you go. Figure it out. But I love that with your recommendations, and you capture it, you give them actionable places where they can do stuff with it. So I'm thinking it feels like you're really in the moment and you're meeting us where we need it. Fast forward 3 to 5 years, okay? Put the crystal ball in front of you. What does a company that's truly harnessed AI agents look like? How is it different from today, the process that we're going? And this is all hypothesis and theoretical, but go 3 to 5 years and tell me how this is working with AI agents, operational wisdom capture. Go.
So I feel like, what we're in the midst of right now is realizing value to businesses that we've actually seen eras like this before in the past. If we think about, let's take Jack Welch's GE, right? And he was like, and just think about all the Black Belt, Six Sigmas, all those folks that were going in and really try to map operational efficiencies. Think about all of the disciples that applied that within their companies. And you just heard of companies like, wow, they were able to get incredible ROI. That's like what we're going to be able to see here with AI if it's deployed effectively. Because like if you think about those changes that like companies like GE were able to see, it's because they literally had people manually map processes, figure out where the opportunities were, and change it. Like I remember um, one of our advisors, he himself is like a black belt Six Sigma. Um, and and he was a CIO at one of the GE divisions, and he was one of the areas that he was trying to understand was like why like in their warehousing division, even though everything was process mapped, but like why are we still getting delays? And it turns out it's because like the order fulfillment, all the orders would come up, and then people there before they were clocking out would just pick up all these orders and be like, "Oh, I'm going to fulfill this one because it was easy. All the really hard ones, I'm just going to leave it for the next shift." When the next shift came, they look at the hard ones like, "Ah, I'm going to leave those aside." And so, but that is like not something that you can pick up unless you dive in. But when they realized it, and the only way they realized it was by having somebody observe and talk to people, and they fixed it. Like they went from like, having some customers with very inconsistent experiences to like, oh, everybody now has like the 24-hour delivery time or things of that sort. Like think about what Amazon has been able to do. And that's like, of course, like AI has been a part of it, but like how have they been able to get things down is because they get these efficiencies. That's what we're going to be seeing a lot of companies enjoy. But to reap those benefits again, you just need to be able to understand then what the process is.
Doc,
Right questions.
yeah, ask the right questions. Yeah. And you stressed multiple times, Vanessa, how you're asking these questions. I think
Right.
that was really good. And I think that's like, there is a scientific rigor here. It isn't just a checklist. Check in with your people, check in with Vanessa. Vanessa, we've taken up too much of your time. If people want to connect with you and find you online, how can they do that?
So they could find me on LinkedIn, Vanessa Liu, last name is spelled Liu, or go on Sugarwork, our website, and just reach out to me through that as well.
Cheese or chocolate?
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Okay, you had that ready. Oreo or Chips Ahoy?
Oreo.
Oh, you seemed offended.
The
Okay.
good thing
No.
for chocolate, what's it with cheese? Were you going to ask to cheese?
No, I don't know. You know what I mean? Well, now, Jessica, tell me, Oreo or Chips Ahoy, what do you think?
Oh, chips. More like pure chocolate. I like a pure chocolate. If you could count that waxy. Okay.
Because I was
Don't be
thinking like
talking smack.
if it were like Oreo or like, in New York, we have this bakery called Levain Bakery, which has like the most
Yeah, we have
delicious.
that here.
Eh,
So good.
Don't say the L word. Do not say Levain.
So good.
So
They're so
good.
dense. They're just like,
They're like
so like you can
cakes.
portion it out over like an hour to eat one.
That is true, though. Yeah, and you have to have like gallons of milk, or like it's a
So
It's a
good.
meal.
you need
It's
a
a
personal
meal.
trainer. It's a meal.
Yes,
It's
you
a cookie
do.
that
Yeah.
eats like a meal. Okay, so then I would say maybe for me, we didn't ask, but I might go Oreo. So tiebreaker, Oreo wins.
Tie.
Okay, merge. If you're driving, if you merge, are you going to get in line early or are you going to zipper in towards the front?
I'm a zipper in towards the front. I'm kind of that obnoxious driver when I get
No,
behind the wheel.
It's more efficient. The New York
it's more.
Times had an article about this. I'll never forget it. I always remind myself of that as I'm aggressively trying to get in. It's more efficient to zipper merge.
This is a high agency decision. The people who are zipping in are smart. The people who are getting in line are dumb. Sometimes I'm in line and I'm like,
Yes.
okay, so I think we all agree. Okay, zipper in. Sunsets or sunrises?
Ooh, I love sunrises. I love sunrises. Only because like I'm most productive in the morning, and there's a calmness, which is just really great just to be able to know like, hey, the whole day is ahead of you. It's very optimistic.
What do you think,
Love
Jess?
that. I'm also a morning person, but weirdly, I think I would say sunset just because it's like I like the more dramatic shadowing and things that happen.
The colors
Dramatic
are
shadows.
beautiful.
Or
Yeah.
bright, but
Yeah.
Drama.
yellows. It's a beautiful moment.
Both of them are good. That's why I felt safe with this one.
Yeah.
I'll say sunrises. So sunrises wins. Okay. Not that it's a competition. Not that it's a competition. I'm not keeping track, but okay. Oh, Jimmy Buffett or Nickelback?
Oh, Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy
What?
Buffett, of course. Like that's
Even
like a very
that,
weird.
it's a really weird one.
Did I
No,
do that
I
weird?
know.
I thought that was a good one. So Jimmy Buffett, no question. Jessica, what do you think?
Who in the right mind would say Nickelback?
Okay. Now
You would?
that. No, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd choose either of them. And that's why I was like, this is very contentious. Why are you doing this? Okay. Anyway, finally, I'll ask one more and then we'll let you back into the real world. Okay. When you're on the subway, do you prefer going uptown or you prefer going downtown?
Oh, so I live downtown. I'm like a downtown person. It's I always joke. I'm like, I need a passport to go of 14th Street.
I'll tell you, when I lived in Astoria, I might as well lived in Nebraska. My friends were in like Manhattan and Brooklyn. I was like, do you want to come over? And they're like, no. I was like, I'm really just literally right here. They're like, I'm sorry. I think they said I don't love you that much, but that's what I heard.
Oh,
Um,
Astoria is amazing. Astoria has the most amazing bagels. I mean, the ethnic food there is terrific. Actually, that's something I'm doing a lot of, which is just going out to the outer boroughs for great, great food. And Astoria has been an area that we've been spending a lot of time in.
Jackson Heights too is
Yeah,
killing
Jackson
it.
Heights. Yeah, Woodside also. Yeah.
Let's go. Get on the 7.
Yeah,
Let's go. Let's meet.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yes. Yes. And go to City Field too.
Anyway. Yeah. Yeah. We'll go catch a game.